20. The last setting. Then you have no foundries or factories in the whole city? Pahala asked. Not one, Durank told him. It was decided decades ago that such things be limited to the land beyond the western wastes, where the hinterland's grasses would go untroubled by them, and their smoke and noise would not disturb the old city. Maybe a rail line or something would have sped up response times, Pahala said. I doubt it, Durank said. Shaishan shells would have crippled them long ago, unless the things were built underground. Besides, Berani added, the place wouldn't have been as worth fighting for if it was filled with clattering trains. You saw Besipalabuhan, Pahala. The place didn't really feel like Lautani at all. Pahala nodded a silent agreement. But Durank, brow furrowed, asked, Is the Iron Harbor far from your lakes? Berani understood this too was a question with multiple meanings. Even just a few mellow, exhausted hours seated in the court as the crowds thinned and the day grew long and the fighting out beyond their sight raged maddeningly on had taught him to expect such things from an Ug. Perhaps, rendered in their tongue, such double implications were more obvious and required less intuition or inference from the familiar listener. It was not irksome after one grew used to it, and Berani found he was good at the game of untangling the accented words. A couple 100 miles, he told the lieutenant. Jalawa is a big island, but it is very different than the rest of Jalawa, I think. Enough so that it feels much farther away. The lakes are like this, an echo of how things should be. Durank nodded, saying, And the Iron Harbor feels more like how things must be. I have heard our western cities are the same. Pahala, passing around a heavy bottle of beet liquor he'd gotten off a passing priest to be emptied into drinking bowls, said, Well, we can all pray to see days when things can go back to being as they should be. Berani, Durank, and many of the other Ug militiamen about them downed their bowls and finished the foul drink with him, the lion folk tolerating it much more readily than their guests from distant Lautani. The milling of souls into or out of the temple against which they rested had changed. It was often now they saw groups of younger priests in their full vestments leading flocks of hundreds of salvaged citizens of the city out of the bowels of the ziggurat and up to the tier of entry into the temple proper above. Durank, when questioned earlier about the safety of moving the people of Surgirkar in the open like this, had said there were indeed interior routes up to the base of the Pillar of Dawn, but that they were likely crammed. His guess had been that all the survivors in the temple unable to fight were being shifted up to pack the massive chamber housing the holiest site in the kingdom. The implications of this had been dark, and so Berani had steered away from digging deep into the topic given the gloomy, if defiant, atmosphere engulfing them. But now, looking out onto a knot of badly wounded soldiers being gently guided up on the same ascent, and half imagining he saw Darmong wobbling among the scattered Lautani figures in the mob, the question he'd mused on before came rolling back in on him, unbidden. Do they have some aim with them, taking them up there? Do you know if there's a plan? Durank shrugged, answering, There is always a plan. The priests of the sun can see what we cannot. If they have ordered it, then there is purpose in it. Whatever happens here, today or tomorrow, I can be certain Gazorgu has seen and shown it in his light. A horn, low and brass, broke the low murmur of the court, and at a far barrier, debris was shifted and carts rolled away. In swept a tide of bloodied citizenry ushered in from some far pocket of the lower city, and walking ragged behind them, the gilded sons of the royal guard, equally bloody and having lost their mounts in some tangle out on the embattled streets. And as they entered, Berani saw that the Ugg manning the barricade fell to their knees before this column of armored men. Salutes and hails were raised among militiamen looking on, and a hush fell heavy on the crowd. Lieutenant Durank muttered something several times in his own tongue, as if it were a mantra. Gun was the sound, low and quick, taken up by several of his militia beside him. Then he said to Berani and Pahala, almost as an afterthought, "The king." And so it was. King Shamat XII, who had been scouring the lower city all through the day with his most trusted riders, had staggered back void of his formidable war lion and short all but a couple dozen of his guard. But with him were shepherded 200 more from the far rim of the city, and as they were ushered up the stairs towards the temple rise, Berani could see that the king's plate was marred and rough with the leavings of battle, and he bled from a maimed arm. And yet he waved away those of the priesthood who surged out of the crowd to tend to him, and pulled the eldest of their number forward to speak in hushed tones as the barricade was made firm behind them. A quick, still exchange was made before King Shamat and his glittering guard strode with urgent purpose for the ziggurat, leaving the priests looking iron and grim. All this Berani and Pahala could see from afar, but the implications of it remained vague. Durank rose to his full height to watch the king's ascent, and Berani and the others did likewise, the tall frames of the Ugg around them making it difficult to see. The monarch of the oldest mortal kingdom on Haraklan did not go far, taking up position along the stairway to the first tier. He turned among his guard to face the gathered soldiery in the tangled plaza below, and addressed his people beneath with a voice so loud that Berani felt it must be a thing of magic, rather than some clever connivance of architectural amplification. And as the warm words reached his ear, he felt the urgency of them, even if he did not understand. The king clasped the arm of the guardsman beside him, who knelt as his lord withdrew back down the temple's edge to be among his men, the rest of his guard with him. The royal guardsman, addressed, lingered a moment looking after them, and then rushed hurriedly away for the temple heights. Several hundred more of their gold-clad number, freshly emerged from the bowels of the ziggurat, were surging forth to join them on the battlements. Horns in the depths of the halls were driving Marines and Ugg riflemen out into the dusk. The crowds ascending the sapphire mountain above them hurried their pace, and shouts went up as the militia and regular army soldiery scattered over the grounds threw on packs and downed hasty water. "They are coming," Durank said in translation. "His Majesty has a plan, and he needs time. Come with me." Berani lingered, nervous, looking off into the turquoise tangle of islanders running for the barricades and compounds fronting the temple plaza. For a moment, he wished to join them, to be reassigned and reordered. He marveled that, in the haze of the afternoon's ragged, sleepless musings, he had never taken Pahala back in to be reorganized. And yet, whatever he wished, there was no time now. There was a rumbling of foreign voices raised in chant, echoing in at them down streets and up the empty routes of the city canals, terribly like the chanting which had been raised outside the outer wall long before dawn. And so Berani merely followed Pahala as he led them to the lines in the current, tracing the shouldered route of the larger Durank through the crowd. The king had mounted one of the barricades to the central causeway before them and was shouting orders to the royal guard about him. Berani and Pahala took the line beside Durank, who was shouting orders up to the rest of his men down the way. The rifles they held were still strange to their grips, and the trembling in their hands worsened as the songs of the enemy reached a fever pitch, and mortar shells began to fall among the defenders. The shrieks and cackling of bestial hordes to their east, and the thumping impact of boots on the run to their west. Still King Shamat in his hide of gold loomed over the men to Berani's left, roared prayer whose cadence the islanders recognized but whose words they did not know upon his lips. None of them moved, even under the deadly steel hail from above. The streets before them were empty out to a T intersection away south, but the compounds alongside the open roadway were already bustling with the half-heard rustle of foreign motion. "Fight well," came the lieutenant's voice beside him, and a heavy hand weighed brief upon his shoulder. "Prevail, or you will be home soon. Either way, you have nothing to fear." And as the sun set upon the western horizon beyond sight, the death whistles sounded.